So we started with a warm-up. So take a moment and copy the equation here and find the x and y intercepts of this equation. Pause the video then and do the problem, and then play to check your answers. So let me show the answers for that. So for the x-intercept, I substituted 0 in for y and then solved for x, and I got x equals 2, so writing that as a coordinate point, 2, 0. For the y-intercept, substituting 0 in for x and solving for y, and I got y equals -4/3, so written as a coordinate point 0, -4/3. Okay, so then we started our notes for today, and the first thing we talked about was the standard form of a line. So the standard form of a line, the warm-up was in standard form that we just looked at. So we had a number times x plus a number times y equals a number. So that's standard form, ax plus by equals c. So you should copy that into your notes. A, now there's a couple things about A. A has to be positive, and A has to be an integer. So no decimals are allowed, no fractions are allowed. And A, again, has to be positive. B and C, the number in front of the y and the number on the other side of the equation, have to be integers, but they don't necessarily have to be positive. Only the A has to be positive. And A and B, they can equal 0, but they can't both equal 0 at the same time. So if A is 0, then B cannot be. And if B is equal to 0, then A cannot be. Because if they were both 0, then we wouldn't have a linear equation at all. So in your notebook, go ahead and copy this first equation, y equals -3x minus 10. What we want to do is we want to get that into standard form. So if we want to get it into standard form, we want the x's and the y's together on the same side and the number on the other side of the equation. So that means what I'm going to do is add 3x to each side of this equation. And when I do that, I'm getting 3x plus y equals -10. Now I'm going to check to see if that appears to be in standard form. Well, 3 is positive and an integer. 1 and -10 are integers, so this is standard form. The next one, so I'm going to first subtract 7x from each side. So -7x plus y is equal to -8. Now the problem with that though is a, the number in front of the x, the coefficient for the x, cannot be negative. So I have to multiply everything through by -1 to get rid of that negative in front of the x. So that gives me a 7x minus 1y equals +8. 7x minus y equals 8. Now I have standard form. Next one, go ahead and put that in your notes. So y equals -2/3 x minus 5. So if I want to put that in standard form, I'm first going to get that 2/3 x over to the other side. So adding 2/3 x to both sides. 2/3 x plus y equals -5. And then the problem is that fraction. So I need to get rid of the dividing by 3. And the way that we get rid of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. Now on the left here, we have 3 times 2/3. So the 3's cancel each other out, and I'm just left with 2 times x, which is 2x. Now notice I'm not crossing that 3 off though, because I don't want to cross it off and then forget that I have to distribute it to the y as well. So I do have to take 3 times the y, which gives me 3y. And then -5 times 3 is -15. And now I have standard form. Next, y equals 1/2 x minus 3/4. So the first thing we're going to do is get that 1/2 x over to the other side by subtracting from each side. So -1/2 x plus y is equal to -3/4. Then I need to get rid of two things, the negative for the a value and the fraction for the a value and for the c value. So I'm looking at those fractions, and I see a 2 and a 4, and I want to figure out what the least common multiple is. So between 2 and 4, the least common multiple is 4. So to get rid of the fractions, I would multiply by 4, but to get rid of the negative, I would multiply by -1. So I'm just going to combine that in one step and multiply everything by -4, which would serve two purposes, getting rid of the fractions and getting rid of the negative. So we're going to take this times -4 on both sides. So on the left, I have -4 times -1/2 x, which is going to give me positive 2x. I have -4 times positive 1y, which is -4y, equals, and I have -4 times -3/4. So the 4's cancel out, and I'm left with a positive 3. And that is standard form. So the other thing I want to talk about is point slope form, which you learned in Algebra 1. This should be review. Point slope form, it looks like this. Y minus y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1. And of course, that's where x1 comma y1 is a point on the line. So if I have 2 points, like I do in this example, -2, 4, and 6, 7, and I want to write them in point slope form, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have to figure out m, the slope, because I need to substitute that into the equation. So let's calculate the slope. We know slope is change in y divided by change in x. So 7 minus 4 over 6 minus -2. Simplifies to 3 over 8. So 3/8 is the slope. So we're going to go ahead and substitute that into point slope. We're also going to pick one of the 2 points, it does not matter which, and substitute in for x and for y. So if I use the first point, y minus, I'm substituting the y, which is 4, is equal to m, which is the slope 3/8, times the quantity of x minus -2. Well, minus -2 we know is +2. And that would be the equation in point slope form. Okay. Or if I use the other point, let's look at what that would be. Y minus, y is 7, equals 3/8 times the quantity x minus the x value, which is 6. That would also be the point slope equation. Okay, now again, the reason they look different is because we just used a different point, but they are both correct for the equation in point slope form. Okay, now the directions only ask for point slope. So if it only asks for point slope, you're going to stop here at this point where you have the slope and the point easily identified. But if the directions then said put the equation into standard form, then I would have to continue. Okay, so even though we're done here, we did put this in point slope form, and that's our answer. I'm going to add a second part to the question. So this was part A. I'm going to add a second part, and the second part is put your equation into standard form. Okay, now again, I wouldn't do that if it just said point slope. I would stop here and I'd be done. But if it does say standard form, I need to continue on. So looking at this equation here on the left, if I'm putting this in standard form, remember I want something x plus something y equals some number. Well, if I need something x, I'm going to have to distribute this 3/8 so that I know how many x's there are. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So y minus 4 equals 3/8 x plus a second here. Okay, sorry, let's keep going here. I thought I made a mistake, but I think we're okay. So 3/8 times x is 3/8 x, and 3/8 times 2 gives us 6/8. Now, I'm not even going to bother simplifying that 6/8 because I know that I'm going to be getting rid of those fractions in a minute anyway. So I'm just going to leave it as 6/8. So remember my goal, standard form. So I want the x over to the left and I want the number over to the right. So I'm going to subtract 3/8 x from each side. So negative 3/8 x plus y equals, and I'm adding 4 on to 6/8. So I'm just going to copy that left. I'm going to get 4 into 8s. So 4 into 8s is 32/8 plus 6/8, okay, is 38/8. So I'm just going to come over here now. Negative 3/8 x plus y equals 38/8. Now I'm ready to do two things. I want to get rid of the negative and I want to get rid of the fractions. So to get rid of the negative, I'm multiplying through by -1, but to get rid of the fractions, I see 8s, I'm going to multiply by 8. So we'll combine both of those steps and multiply both sides by -8. Okay, so we have -8 times negative 3/8 x, so the 8's cancel out. A negative times a negative is a positive, so that's 3x. I have -8 times positive 1y, which is -8y. And I have negative times a positive 38/8, so that becomes a negative, and the 8's cancel each other out, which means -38. So my equation in standard form, if I was asked to put it in standard form, would be 3x minus 8y equals -38. So let's try this one. So it is just asking for point slope. So first let's calculate the slope. Change in y, -13 minus -1 over 5 minus -1. So that gives us -13 plus 1 over 5 plus 1, which is -12 over 6, which is -2. So y minus y1, I'm just going to use the point here on the left. So y minus -1 is y plus 1. Equals -2 is my slope times the quantity x minus -1, so plus 1. That is the equation in point slope form. Now again, that was using the point on the left. If I use the point on the right, y minus -13, so plus 13, equals -2, my slope, times the quantity x minus 5. That would be the other equation in point slope form. Okay, so those are my answers. Now, once again, even though that was all the directions asked for, I'm going to add a part B, and that is put your equation in standard form. Okay, so let's do that as well. So I'm just going to take the one on the left here. So we have y plus 1 equals -2 times the quantity x plus 1. We do need to distribute that -2. And then we're going to bring the 2x over by adding 2x each side and subtracting 1 from each side. So 2x plus y is equal to, subtracting 1 will give me -3. Now I have the equation written in standard form. Let's try these. So the first one, write the equation of the line in standard form through the point -3, 4 with a slope of -5. Now, it doesn't specify how I'm going to start. It does say eventually I need the equation to be written in standard form. Well, standard form, we know is that, but we don't know what A, B, or C are. So I can't start with standard form and just start substituting in. I wouldn't get anywhere. I need to either start with slope-intercept form or point-slope form. Now, it didn't specify which I started with, so you can pick because it doesn't specify. But my final answer needs to be put into standard form. So what I suggested in class was y equals mx plus b is the one that most students are familiar with. So to get you more familiar with point slope form, I would suggest you do the homework using point slope to get some more practice. So I'm going to do this one with point slope. And the next one, same thing, we're going to use point slope. Even though we could use either, we're going to use point slope for practice. So y minus 4 is the y value, equals m, the slope, -5, times the quantity of x minus -3, which is +3. So that would be point slope form if that's what it asked for, but it didn't. It asked for standard. So I'm going to keep going. Y minus 4 equals distributing the -5. Gives me that. And then I need to get the 5x over and the 4 over. So adding 5x and adding 4 to each side gives me 5x plus y is equal to adding 4 to -15 gives me -11. And now I have standard form. Okay. Next one, I'd like you to do the exact same way using the point, using the slope, using point slope, and then changing your answer into standard form. I would suggest that you pause the video and try it on your own and then play to check your answer. Okay, so let's go over that. Y minus 4 equals -1/8 times x minus 16. So I'm going to distribute that -1/8. And when I multiply -1/8 times -16, first of all, negative times a negative is a positive. 16 times 1/8 is 16/8. And 16/8, 16 divided by 8 is 2. Now I'm going to bring the 1/8 x over by adding, and adding 4 to each side gives me 1/8 x plus y is equal to, I'm adding 4 onto both sides, so 4 plus 2 is 6. And now I don't have it quite in standard form yet. I need to get rid of that 1/8. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 8. And that gives me 8 times 1/8 is 1x. 8 times y is 8y. Equals 6 times 8 is 48. Now I have my equation in standard form. So homework for tonight is pages 25 and 26, all problems on those pages. Pay close attention to the directions. Sometimes it'll ask for standard form, sometimes it'll ask for slope-intercept form, and sometimes it'll ask for point-slope form. Other times it might not specify, and then you can pick whichever form you would like. And then page 27, problems 1 through 8. Do those for tomorrow.